I have spent my whole life scared.
Thomas Shelby and Walter White. Two characters, two anti-heroes, two very different paths. Let's take it back to episode 1. When we first meet Walter White in episode 1 of Breaking Bad, we meet a man who is on the edge. He's a man who is greatly dissatisfied with the rather average domesticated life that he has built for himself. Having sold his founding shares of a billion-dollar company early on, Walter instead decided to focus on his family and take a teaching job at a local high school. He feels cheated out of the life he could have had. He's a man who feels deep regret over never having reached his true potential. He's bitter, he's angry, and he's resentful. He's been a pushover his whole life, and he's allowed those around him to make decisions for him out of fear of making the wrong decision. Fear is what has controlled his life up until this point, and it's for this reason that he feels weak and emasculated. So by the time he gets diagnosed with cancer in episode 1, he's reached a breaking point. On the other hand, Thomas Shelby is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Having survived the war as a soldier, he feels as though he's cheated death. The war has left him cold and detached, an empty shell of the man he once was. Feeling as though he's cheated death, he has a sort of throw caution to the wind type of attitude towards life. He fears nothing, not even death. This allows him to develop unchecked ambition that we see play out throughout the series. And herein lies the major distinction between the two characters' beginnings. Walter White eventually becomes the man that Thomas Shelby already is. You see, in the beginning, Walter is a humble family man. And even when he does get into the drug business, his intention is only to make enough money to provide for his family once he passes. Everything he does is for his family. But throughout the series, we see him morph into someone completely different. He becomes cold, hardened, and detached. His ambitions grow, and his motivations become more about his own ego and the pursuit of more and more power rather than his original intention of providing for his family. This change is best portrayed in the pivotal episode 6 of the first season, when we literally and figuratively see Walter White transform from the humble family man we met in episode 1 to the ruthless anti-hero that we follow for the remainder of the series. Thomas Shelby's path is very different. He's already a ruthless gangster by the time we meet him. His experiences in the war have left him almost devoid of any emotion. He's detached from those around him, and his pursuit of status and power is not at all masked by any sort of noble intentions. He's a man who's already been broken down, whereas Walter White is a man who breaks down. You see, over the course of the last season of Peaky Blinders, we see Thomas Shelby go through an existential crisis of identity. He suffers a great deal of loss throughout the series that cause him to question the decisions he's making and the destructive path he's on. The most pivotal of these losses is the death of his wife from a bullet that was meant for him. This causes him to realize that the decisions he's making are directly putting those he loves in harm's way. And so by the end of the series, we see him metaphorically kill off who he was, put down his gun, and choose to leave everyone he knows and loves behind in a sort of self-sacrificial way in order to begin a new life on his own. By the end of Breaking Bad, however, Walter White has degenerated into a monster. His motivations have completely become egotistical and self-serving, no longer being about his family. He even admits this in the last scene he has with his wife, Skylar.
You need to understand.
I have to hear one more time that you did this for the family.
I did it for me. I liked it.
In the end, he's abandoned by everyone he knows and cares about. he dies alone in the cold and dark. The story of Walter White is one of degeneration. It's a cautionary tale of the destructiveness of unchecked ego. He allows his bitterness and resentment to completely transform him from the humble family man he once was to the morally corrupted villain he eventually becomes. Whereas the story of Thomas Shelby is one of redemption. No matter how low you sink, you're never too late to rediscover what's truly important in life. You can always choose to sacrifice who you once were for who you wish to become. In the first episode of Peaky Blinders, we see Thomas Shelby ride into town on a black horse, his face masked by the shadow of his brimmed hat, symbolizing death and destruction. In the last episode, we see Thomas Shelby on a white horse, watching every remnant of who he once was go up in smoke, his face fully revealed to us as he rides off into a new and uncertain future in a sign of hope and new beginnings. Walter White dies, whereas Thomas Shelby is reborn.